Insurance is no longer just about policies and claims, it's about trust, resilience, and managing risk in an increasingly connected digital world. Hello and welcome to the Insurtech Story Podcast, the podcast where we decode how technology is reshaping the future of insurance. I'm your host, Surya Saha, and in each of our episodes, we bring you conversations with industry leaders, innovators, and disruptors who are redefining insurance as we know it. In today's episode, we are diving into the topic beyond UPI from innovation to liability. And joining us today is Soumya Shukla, who is the executive partner at LPCO, who with over 15 years of experience in insurance, risk, and reinsurance advisory. She is a specialist in liability and specialty insurance, claims consulting, and regulatory compliance. She is also known for helping organizations navigate complex risk challenges with practical, business focused solutions. In this conversation, we'll explore why cyber insurance alone isn't enough and how professional indemnity is becoming a strategic necessity for fintechs, the evolving landscape of cross border liability, and what founders, investors, and insurers must do to build resilient business that can innovate with confidence in the global digital economy. With that, welcome to the show, Soumya, and let's dive into today's discussion.
Thank you so much. It's totally my pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Soumya. Um, we are going to discuss something quite beyond what we normally discuss in insurance or along the insurtech ecosystem, how technology is coming along, etc. But in today's discussion, as we see India as a country that has successfully built world-leading digital payment infrastructures through platforms like NPCI, UPIs. So as fintech companies expand globally, what new professional indemnity and cross-border liability risk emerges beyond what we see as traditional cybersecurity concerns? What's your opinion on this? What do you see?
Yes. Thank you, Surya. I want to start with something very positive that, yes, undoubtedly, India's fintech story is one of the greatest technology success stories of the last decade. The scale at which we have digitized financial transactions, it is phenomenal and unmatched. Our payment infrastructure has become a global benchmark with several countries now queuing up to adopt or integrate the Indian payment solutions. But it comes at a cost. Behind the scalability of these solutions, the biggest factor, as you rightly mentioned, is the trust of the customers. When a business asks customers to trust its platform, for example, a bank asking you to use their app, you trust that system with your money, with your personal information, with reliability. So the natural expectation is that that particular app or platform has been developed with reasonable skill, care, and diligence. The expectation is that it will perform in a certain manner and that it will keep your data and money safe. There is so much discussion happening around cybersecurity. There were already laws with respect to data protection. Laws have been developed in form of GDPR in Europe and DPDP in India, and they're constantly evolving to meet the increasing threat of cybersecurity. You mentioned traditional cybersecurity risk. Till pre-COVID times, the cybersecurity risk was in fact considered as one of the emerging risks. How quickly it has now become a traditional risk. Professional indemnity insurance, on the other hand, has been in existence from much before cybersecurity risk. It's just that now it has become a real threat. Professional negligence claims has become a real threat as we have started exporting more and more services. You know, in service related liability, the biggest risk is that it is very quiet. It is nowhere half as dramatic as cybersecurity risk. The mandatory reporting of a cyber incident, the way any cyber incident is covered, it does not happen the same way for professional liability insurance or professional liability claims for that matter. I'll stay away from insurance for now. Professional indemnity claims are not highlighted the way cyber claims are highlighted. But When you're providing a technological service to a third party, the liability would inevitably follow if there is any kind of allegation of error or negligence on the behalf of the service provider. When a fintech starts operating across jurisdictions, one has to realize that it is not just operating in the new jurisdiction, it is entering a new legal ecosystem, a different user mindset. I want to give a very small example of a mindset here. Recently, I was visiting a friend who was about to have a surgery in the hospital. I was there, and I had had a procedure a couple of weeks back. The anesthesiologist who had come to interview my friend before the procedure recognized me and immediately got very enthusiastic and mentioned, "Oh, remember you came here for so and so procedure." I was taken aback. But I let it go because this is the user mindset in India. We would not take it that seriously. But when you are across jurisdictions, when you are in America, do you think that this kind of negligence would fly? It won't. Same is the case with professional negligence with respect to technological services, which is why a traditional cybersecurity policy is no more sufficient. It is work half done. Unless you have identified your exposure in terms of the jurisdiction where you are operating, the kind of laws that you'll be subjected to, the kind of claims that you can be subjected to from the users of your product, you have not done a good job managing your risk.
Yep. So I think you have mentioned a very important thing about, why professional indemnity is perhaps not being, looked into in that greater, depth as to other aspects of the insurance ecosystem. So can you throw some light that at least in India as a country, we don't see this as in one of the important, life cycle in the insurance business, or rather the awareness is still not there. However, the increasing need is something that should speak for itself. So how do you think that, even from the policyholder side or the insurance companies who will provide such products, should look into, and where services industry or services players like you should come into the picture?
Yeah. So I would again want I always like to start conversations on a positive note. I want to say one thing that
Absolutely.
the Indian insurance industry in terms of liability insurance is a very sophisticated market. Our
True.
insurers have enough and more products, and these policies are highly, when I say about these policies, I mean professional indemnity policy, cyber insurance policy, directors and officers of insurance
Yeah.
policies, the policies that are considered to be catering to these new age intangible risks. We have enough and more insurers who can cater to this, who understand these risks. We have literature coming in, expertise coming in from foreign players that helps us to understand the exposure that these kind of businesses come with. Unfortunately, the Indian mindset is not yet ready to accept the fact of buyer mindset that they can be exposed to litigation due to their services. A simple conversation with the buyer. This is a very big organization. I was sitting across because the legal team wanted me to be a part of this discussion. Sorry, the legal team, I was reviewing the contract with the legal team and I pointed out a couple of concerns in the contract which I felt exposed them to risks which were not adequately covered in their professional indemnity insurance policy. However, a very senior member of the organization simply said, in past 5 to 10 years of my being with this organization, I've never had a claim. You know, the fact that traditionally you've not had a claim is not a guarantee that you will not have a claim in next year or next minute or next moment. It is never a guarantee. These are softwares, these are algorithms, these are technologies developed by human beings. A simple update which you do to a software, if it has a vulnerability which leads to a loss to the third party, you are exposed to a claim. There may not be a data loss at all. This again takes us back to the first question that you asked, that why do we need to see beyond cyber insurance? The loss is not just a data loss. The loss could also be in form of a financial loss that is happening to a third party. If I'm providing you a technology that you can use, implement in your business, and it is not performing up to your expectations, you will sue me for the loss that the opportunity costs that are lost,
Yep. Yep.
possible business loss that has happened, your investment in my product, and the reputation loss that you faced because my product failed to deliver in a manner.
Yep.
So, all of this combined is a very real threat to any business. But the mentality that the buyer is still facing in India is that insurance is an expense. If I've paid 100 rupees as a premium, how much will I recover? It is not a recovery tool. It is an indemnification tool. Let's hope against all hope that a business never faces any kind of loss, that they have to use their insurance policies. But that is possible only in an ideal world. It does not happen actually like that. The beauty of this policy, of any liability policies and professional indemnity, because we're talking about, is that your product may be just fine, your services may be just fine. Still, your third party customer can come after you saying that, no, I'm not happy with your services, hence I'm suing you. What do you do then? You will have to engage a lawyer. Do you imagine the cost of engaging a lawyer in a territory like US?
Yep.
It runs into crores and crores of rupees. These policies provide you safeguard against that defense cost as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you have mentioned a very valid point, that is on the awareness that, how the mindset really works, and why, countries like India still thinks and treats insurance as an expense and not something that really helps them recover from a future or perceived risk, right? Um, so, having said that, Soumya, many fintech founders invest heavily in cybersecurity but overlook professional indemnity insurance. And that's a fact in a country like us and even in the broader Southeast Asia. Why does this knowledge gap exist, and how can founders better understand the overlap between, say, cyber incidents, technology failures, or even, as you mentioned, financial liability to third parties?
So I will answer this with the simplest and most human reason. Okay. We all tend to prepare for a risk that we can easily imagine. I have a building, it can collapse. There is, there could be fire. I have, a car, it can get stolen. Hence, we start insuring these things. Now, a cyber attack has become so frequent on organizations that it is very easy to imagine. And we are talking about fintech. Most of the founders are tech experts. They are developing their softwares around technology. They are building their businesses around technologies. They are preparing that their systems are resilient to cyber attacks. So they have already envisioned that risk. When you envision that risk, you would obviously invest heavily to protect your business from that exposure. Also, cyber attacks are very, very visible. You have to mandatorily, in India, you have to mandatorily report it to certain. Abroad, also, you have to follow so many regulatory compliances in case your system is hit by a cyber attack. Now, professional liability is quieter. It is difficult to visualize that how far can my business or my software or my technology cause a loss to a third party? The extent to which my obligation can arise because of the technological services that I'm providing is a very blurry vision. There's only as much as I can imagine. A very small example I want to give here. In property policies, in your traditional fire, marine policies, you have a sum insured. If you have not insured your property to the extent its actual value, then the concept of underinsurance applies, and the insurer will pay only, they will proportionally reduce the claim amount, and they'll pay you. Liability is one such field where there is no concept of underinsurance, because you cannot imagine the kind of loss your business can cause to somebody else. Imagine a white, I provide you an application. You white label it and you use it. When you are providing that white labeled application to your third party, that third party faces a loss. They will come back to your customer, who will ultimately come back to your uh, to you as a fintech partner. This person who is in between, your white labeling partner, will never disclose it to that end customer that they are actually using your software. Now, between you and me as a technology provider and a user of that technology provider, there will be no public outcry. There will be closed room discussions. There will be negotiated settlements. There will be a secret, secretive discussion about how do we settle this between us. Have you ever heard of any company discussing it in public that, I've had a professional liability claim from my customer, or any customer saying that I have claimed from my vendor uh, a claim for negligence of services? It never happens. This is so much in contrast to a cyber attack, which is so visible. So it is natural for the fintech founders, for who are anyway so tech heavy, to prepare themselves for that kind of eventuality which they can envision, instead of also equally weighing their risk in terms of professional services. I want to give you an example here. Now, there are two entities. Entity A is the service provider, entity B is the third party to whom the services are being provided. There was a lapse of security in entity A's system, because of which the information, email accounts, etc., of entity B were cloned. There was a man in the middle who followed what kind of conversations are going, and this man in the middle kind of copied the way of communication of entity A and sent an email to entity B asking them to transfer certain funds, which entity B did. So, this is a typical business email communication fraud that happened on entity B. Now, entity B, on the face of it, can call it a cyber incident or cyber crime incident. They did not. They came back to entity A seeking claim for negligence to maintain a system which could provide a safe business environment to entity B to carry out their business, which was in the scope of services of entity A. So, how can somebody, segregate cyber from professional indemnity, especially when your business is built around technology? So, the line between cyber and professional indemnity is not as black and white as one can imagine. It is very blurred. And it is about time that the founders of these technology companies understand. You know, a very important thing to note here is that the insurers in India and abroad are now coming out with hybrid products which cyber and professional indemnity with each other intertwined. The reason, they understand that these risks cannot be isolated when it comes to technology. If you look at a standalone cyber policy, it will have contractual liability exclusions. If you look at a professional indemnity policy, it would have technology related, cyber incident related exclusions. So, which is why the founders, the owners of technology companies, fintech companies, need to understand that these two products cannot be seen, or risks cannot be seen in silos, and need to involve their legal team, their cyber team, to sit together and understand that how these risks can be covered in their through their insurance. It should not be a backward exercise. I bought an insurance policy because I was required to. Now there is a claim. Now I can see where it will fit.
Yep, absolutely.
And
You know, we do understand how this industry is regulated, right? And of course, some of the important points you've mentioned and where the founders should focus on. But looking at the regulatory side of it, and with the increasing regulatory scrutiny across the international markets and even, within the domestic market, what practical risk management, governance, and insurance strategies should Indian fintech firms adopt? Primarily, say, to confidently scale their business while alongside protecting, their partners, investors, and end users at the same time.
The most important part is to change the mindset of, buying the cheapest policy. I
Yeah,
strongly feel that you cannot treat insurance as a compliance checkbox. You have to see it as a risk mitigation tool. If I'm operating in a jurisdiction, my contract has several clauses. Which law would apply? What would be the seat of litigation? Are my liabilities capped or uncapped? If uncapped, in which areas are they uncapped? Then you sit with the insurance policy or your insurance advisor and understand what all of these risks can be actually covered under the insurance policy. You have to understand, as I said, that the policies are so flexible that invocation of a bank guarantee can be covered as a claim trigger under a PI policy. Not many people would know that. That, if you have to investigate, if you have to look into what happened, if you have to incur certain costs to mitigate the loss, to correct the error that has been done, those kind of mitigation losses can be covered under insurance policy. If your fees has not been paid by the third party because there has been some negligence in your performance in your technology, and you feel that claiming these fees from the these outstanding fees from the third party would lead to a bigger claim, you can let it be and claim it from your insurer. This is the scope of these policy. It is as wide as one can imagine. So it is very important that the policy that the entity is buying should be aligned with their business exposure. That is
yeah,
point number one. Second point, I would repeat at the cost of repeating myself, do not treat cyber risk and professional indemnity risks as separate products. There are enough and more overlaps between the two. If you continue to treat them as separate products, there will be instances which will fall through the gap.
yeah,
Third thing, please involve your legal team. When it comes to liability policies, please involve your legal team, because the procurement team, unfortunately, would not be able to identify the extent of exposure that any business is facing in a particular jurisdiction.
yeah.
These are
Yeah,
some of the tips that
absolutely.
I
I
would like
think
to take.
I think Soumya, to really sum it up, and what you really advised to the fintech players in focus, that, correct me if I'm wrong, those that really proactively integrate compliance, cyber resilience, or financial protection into their business strategy will be better positioned to scale confidently, of course, and compete successfully in an increasingly regulated global marketplace like today's, and especially in an industry like in like insurance. And how you really pointed out categorically that do not treat cyber and professional indemnity together. It should be, of course, go hand in hand, but it's two different elements to look at it. And I think that's a brilliant way to conclude, and brilliant advice for the fintech players and the founders listening to this episode.
Just one more thing that I would like to
Yeah,
add, that a robust liability program also leads to a lot of investor confidence. I have seen investors backing out
yeah,
because
yeah,
the professional indemnity policy or the cyber policy or the D&O policy did not seem
yeah,
sufficient.
absolutely. I think that's a good important addition to the Insurtechs to look at, actually, right?
Yes.
Because that's what they uh, deal with day in and day out, right?
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
with that, Soumya, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today, and it was a pleasure having you on the show. And
Thank
to
you
our
so much.
listeners, if you have enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow Insurtech Story Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Amazon Music, and share it with your network. Until next time, stay safe and take care. Goodbye for now.